Hi guys and girls. So I thought I'd do a few videos just covering a few different parts of the swing and hopefully some of you might learn something from it um, or it might just reinforce some of the things you already know um, and hopefully you get a chance to practice a few things. So take a look. Okay, so putting. So once you feel like you've got a good setup, we want to then understand that the putter is making a pendulum in front of you. Okay, and understanding where that comes from is important. So um, it's going to feel, in a perfect world, as though it comes from the middle of your back. Now, for different people, it feels like different places, but you can see there that's halfway down my back, and as I am putting, that's just rocking ever so slightly. Okay, now for me, I personally like to feel like it comes from my lats. So I feel like I lock the shoulder blades down onto my rib cage, and then I feel like from there, I find it easier to make a consistent putt. Again, that probably looks exactly the same, but it's important to understand that the putting action is coming from there. Now, when you're doing that, try to think about a few things. Okay, so you need to be very aware, as I said, that the putter is making a pendulum around you. Okay, now because of the pendulum, because of that pendulum, the putter is always going to be the same distance from your body. So if you can imagine, if I've got that putter out in front of me, and let's say, for example, you're up against the wall. So this is when you can do at home, and I've got my putter in position here. As I turn my body, try not to move anything from the hips down here, below the hips. I'm going to see that club come away from the wall. It's not going to extend down the wall and not going to extend down the wall on the way through. It's just going to come away from the wall, and that putter head is always going to be the same distance from my sternum as it started. It's just my upper torso that's moving it. Okay, from halfway up my spine upwards. So as I said, very important to make sure that everything below that point is completely still. Some people, they do prefer the feeling of a slight movement, but I would say for the time being, let's say, depending on how advanced you are, if you're and what faults you're feeling, if you feel like you're very robotic and there's very little feel in the putt, and you're just not feeling like you can repeat what you're trying to do, I would say that's when there might be. It's almost as though you're too robotic. There's not enough feel in there. You need to have almost a little bit of movement in there. When I say a little bit of movement, I'm talking tiny, absolutely tiny. But for the vast majority of people, I would say no movement from the feeling in the middle of the back down is dead still. So it's just from the middle of the back up, which is all then going to be one solid block. That is then what creates that arc and what creates that putter pendulum. So you're going to then see as the putter, you can see here my little station, as I'm set up, as I take that putter back, it's not only going to be an arc, so again it rises up from the ground, it's also going to move ever so slightly. Now I'm going to exaggerate this, but in to square to in from the ball to target line. Okay, so it's in to square to in, so it does come in ever so slightly. So again, you can do you did that one up against the wall, you can now do one up against the skirting board, and you're going to see the putter head come in ever so slightly and then out ever so slightly. So it's going to come in to square to in. Okay, never just going to go up and down the skirting board. There's one particularly really good putter. Really good, very good player. But I don't know if putting is his strong suit. Who's suffered a bit with that in the past. So think about the actual arc itself. and make sure you're watching the club doing the right thing. Now, for different players, the club face will open slightly, open more and close more, and then open less and close less. Now, there are two types of putters. There's a face balance putter, which is when you just hold the balance point of the shaft, and you can see how the face there just stays completely dead flat. There are toe weighted putters, which are more bladed putters, which are going to be more like this. So if it's a slightly more toe weighted putter, that's going to encourage the club face to open a bit more and close a bit more. So if you're someone who does have a bit more of a narrower arc, so by narrower arc, I mean, sure how well you can see that, but I'd say that would be a fairly narrow arc. You can see it's coming in quite a bit. And if you're not so narrow in the arc, it's going to go a bit more probably that way, where there's a slight bend in that movement. But and that can also be depending on if you're in setup, then and you are a player who doesn't particularly like to get his eyes over the ball, for example, and that's just the way that you putt well, and you're sitting back a little bit more on your heels, then naturally your arc, again, this is exaggerated, is going to be a bit more around you and around you. So that kind of toe weighted putter might be good for you because it's going to encourage a bit more opening and closing. If you're someone who's very much over the top of the ball, you try and get the shaft as upright as possible and the toe down as far as you can, then you're going to definitely go more towards sort of like a slight mallet but type putter, or at least a face balance putter, something with centre shaft or something like that if you don't like the mallet. But it's quite important to make sure that you know what your arc is, and then from there make sure that the putter is solid. Another note on the putter length, again, if it's a very long shaft and you feel like you can't, well, I'd say if you feel like you can't get your eyes over the ball, so you can see here I've just got a mirror. So this is from Putt Out. These are great, but you can do this just a mirror. Take the mirror out of, well, take the mirror maybe out of the bathroom cabinet or something like that. Lay a mirror down and just see whether you're getting your eyes over the ball. Or even better than that, actually, just drop a ball from your eyes when you're in setup. Just drop a ball from your eyes, see where on the ground it lands. If it's in a good position, if it lands right where the ball is, then you've got your eyes over the ball. I'd say pretty good neutral setup. A lot of things become easier from there. If it goes too far out or too far in, then it does start to become a little bit more complicated. So then it might be worth changing setup, or it might be worth changing length of club, because obviously the longer that is, the more you're likely to be behind the ball. Shorter it is, slightly over the top of it. Again, but there's so much personal preference in putting, it's very difficult to sort of make sure that you're to say this is what you should be doing. I would say that there is a lot that you should be feeling very comfortable with. But as long as you understand what it is that you're doing, then you're able to, when it goes wrong, make it better. Yeah. So with that being said, there's a couple of things to watch out for. So key fundamental is going to be obviously setup. Make sure you've got the setup in the right place. Again, that can be personal preference, but there was just in that putting video, there's a couple of set points in that were fundamentally really sound to have in your putting setup, regardless of how you like to stand. There are a few really good fundamentals in there. With actual putting itself, with the action, the main real fundamental is making sure that you're understanding where the putt is coming from, middle of the spine, creating that arc. Okay, understanding that the putter is going to have a movement from in to square to in, and making sure that putt is also not just moving in square to in, but it's having that arc that is going to move. It's going to move away from the ground, back to the ball, and then away from the ground. Okay, but it's going to be on that slightly angled arc. Okay, so with that, make sure that the club face is always returning square. That is huge. Obviously, the face is going to be the biggest determinant of where the ball is going to go and where the ball is and how the ball is going to roll. Path of the club. So if I move inside in to square to out, that's not going to really have much of a say in how the ball rolls, it will have a little bit of a say. There will be a little bit of spin somewhere, I'm sure. But if I'm honest, it would be so negligible that it's the face that is the most important thing, and then how the club face is pointing toward off of that path. So what you'll tend to find, someone who moves from in to square to out, will often be slightly off center, slightly out with the club face. There are people that putt. I think it was Brad Faxon that used to putt from in to out, who was fantastically good. He's one of the world's best putters. So he used to actually putt from in to square to out, but done fantastically well with it. I would say that if you have a favourite putt slightly right to left, then you probably would be slightly from in to square to out, or if you prefer left to right putts, then you for a right-handed golfer, then you probably tend to prefer from out to square to in. So, and one last thing to watch out for, I would really say that again, watch out for hip movement, and then hip movement. As I'm taking that putter away, moving through, I'm not allowing my pelvis to move whatsoever. So you can do that by stick through the belt buckles or belt loops. And a good one is get yourself in a door frame. Hips on the doors or on each side of the frame, and just get used to the feeling of there being absolutely no movement in the pelvis whatsoever. Again, you can really get the feeling, you can identify where the movement's coming from. And again, that's so important. So that being said, it's then wrists. There shouldn't be hardly any wrist movement, if any. Okay, so as I was saying before my net broke, you're dealing with very small amount of margin, so the wrists become incredibly important. We want to try and make sure that there is absolutely no movement within those wrists. If you're putting again, you feel like you have a lot of distance control issues, one of the telltale signs is there's a lot of movement within the wrists. So I try and get a lot of my lessons to really think about using just one gear to move the whole putt. Again, it just comes from the center of the spine. As soon as you start adding too many gears, so again, that's like wrists, arms, trying to make sure that little shoulder movement, things like that, that sort of thing will really hinder just distance control, let alone the implications of trying to get the club face back to square with it. So again, you want everything to try and be as easy as possible when you're putting, because remember, you're dealing with inches and feet. You're not dealing with yards and hundreds of yards. So we want very, very almost restricted movement. But as I go back to the start, it's got to feel like you have a feel. Can't just be robotic. And one last thing is tempo. You've got to make sure that your tempo is to a I would say a very personal cadence. So like if you're a fast walker and a fast talker and things like that, then you'll probably have a tendency to have a slightly faster tempo. If you're slow and very methodical and you don't move, and you don't do things that fast, then you will have a very slow cadence or tempo rhythm. But you can use a metronome app, and they are fantastic for just literally doing the same thing and getting into a rhythm. Your body really responds well to sort of hearing a beat and just moving in the same way. So ideally, we want to try and make sure that when you're putting, everything you're doing is just repeat, repeat, repeat. So the tempo will make sure that you're always moving in the same cadence. Now, then the length of arc will be longer and shorter. Okay, so if I'm going 1, 2, and then I'm 1, 2, so I'm keeping to the same tempo, the same rhythm, my arc effectively speeds up. I'm not feeling the speed up. What I'm feeling is the rhythm, and I'm responding to the length of putt with the arc lengthening and shortening. And there's a really good video that I do on distance control, just doing it at home, just gaining that sense of controlling what the wrists are doing, controlling what the movements are. Sorry, distance control, controlling what the distance control. What you need for distance control, and getting rid of a sense, taking away sight, just trying to get used to doing the same thing. It's a really good drill. So I hope you've got something from that, whether it be something new or it's just a better understanding of what you already know. Hopefully you get a chance to be able to practice it and look after yourselves.